Yo, welcome back to another video. Now we have the brand new Sukuna's finger that has just come out, and this is the new Vanguard familiar that is specifically for Sukuna himself. You cannot equip it onto anybody else. Now there is no model of the familiar in-game because of course it is a finger, so our background footage is just Sukuna, which is completely fine. To be able to obtain this familiar, you get this from the King's Return event. You need to complete up to 25 stages per day with using Sukuna to earn up to 20 coins every single day, and then in the shop you can purchase the familiar for 100 coins. This means that you do need to complete this event for 5 days to be able to obtain enough coins to be able to purchase the familiar. Like it with Gojo's, is this familiar limited? No, it is not a limited familiar. You can obtain it now. It will go away once the event ends, and it will come back later with a permanent obtainment method. Although one thing to note is that the obtainment method later on will be more tedious and a bit more painful than if you were to obtain the familiar right now. With that being said, let's get straight into checking out what this familiar does. Going over the familiar's passives, the first passive is the King of Curses. This unit applies cleave on every attack and buffs all curse units by 30%. This first passive, the buffs all curse units by 30%, does also apply to the placement of Sukuna himself, so a monarch will benefit from this as well, which is very good. The second passive is the cursed one, increases damage by 200% and range by 30%. Pretty simple, just increasing his stats. And his third passive is Shift's Preparation. Anytime this unit first inflicts cleave on an enemy, immediately follow up with attack 2. Now I believe that this won't infinitely follow up if this is how you're going to read it. The follow-ups is about targeting an enemy. I'm not going to get too into detail on it, but it's not going to follow up infinitely. But the attack 2 follow-up is very nice because it is his full AoE. Outside of that, there really isn't too much to say when it comes to going over the familiar. It is also not corruptible or can be changed with stat rerolls because it is a unit specific familiar. So with that being said, let's get straight into going in game to check out this familiar on Sukuna himself. Alright, now that we are in game, let's go ahead and check him out. I don't have a traitless version. Unfortunately, I have an ethereal, so I will just be showcasing his damage initially through Monarch, and I'll just be saying his traitless damage as we go alongside it. So his Monarch damage on placement is 45.9 thousand. This is because he does get that 30% buff from his own familiar passive, which is very nice. This means that Monarch is actually really good for him because he is able to benefit from his own curse buff. Another note with his curse buff is that it is all units on the map. It does not need to be within his range, so we have 30% benefiting from here as well. His damage at a non-monarch should be around 11.8 thousand. Now his follow-up attacks will be attack 2, which is his full AoE attack, which is very nice. Moving on to check out his damage, he is at 377.9 thousand damage, but of course we can get 30% more damage from stacking his ability passive as well. Right here, 1% damage for each kill during Sinister Sanctum, so it's only 30 kills that you need to do, and we can get up to a ×2 multiplier. This gives Sukuna 444,000 damage with godly stats. Perfect godly stat. This goes up to 457,000 damage. His damage non-monarch would be 114,000 damage. So when he is max upgraded, if he is not doing a follow-up, he will do burn, and if he does do his follow-up, he will not apply a burn, but he will apply a bleed. So his burn damage at monarch is 137,000 damage, and his bleed is 164,000 damage. His burn and bleed at non-monarch is 34,000 damage and 41,000 damage. The full amount of damage that he is doing if he is able to do a normal attack and a follow-up attack, this is 1.21 million damage as a monarch and 304,000 as a non-monarch. So now going on to the DPSs. For non-monarch, his DPS without a follow-up is 24,000 DPS. With a follow-up, this goes up to 49.8 thousand DPS. If he is attacking a boss and does a follow-up, he is doing 64.8 thousand DPS, and without a follow-up on a boss, it is 31.6 thousand DPS. Moving on to the monarch damages, DPS without a follow-up is 106,000 DPS. If he is able to follow up with that attack, he goes up to 217,000 DPS. That is wild. When he is attacking a boss and not doing follow-ups, he is doing 138,000 DPS, and if he is able to follow up while attacking a boss, he can do 282,000 DPS. This DPS number is stupid high, especially for a unit that is just by himself. No other units that are with him. He will do 282,000 damage. This is, of course, if he is able to follow up, which I'll showcase something later on, so do keep in mind. But for now, yeah, his DPS would be 138,000, which is really good, but it's not like the craziest. Sukuna, I think, is actually such cracked unit, and honestly, I might consider myself going for Monarch on him. I only have an Ethereal, and I really don't have many trait rerolls, so I might not. But the reason why I would consider is because I may or may not have already got a Monarch on my Vegeta, so I don't need to worry about needing to try go for a Monarch on Vegeta. If you do want a Monarch on him, I'm praying that Monarch will be fine on him, because otherwise I just have a wasted Monarch. I should have waited, but I did it anyway. Anyway, enough with that yapping. Let's get into 2 units that I think are really good to pair alongside Sukuna. The first unit that pairs alongside Sukuna really well is, of course, Kaguya. Kaguya can benefit from Sukuna by getting the curse element and also the 30% buff. Another thing is, though, if you do place a Kaguya before you place your Sukuna down, she actually does not benefit from that 30% buff, but let's say I sell my Sukuna and replace them, she will now get that 30% buff. Okay, and now we move on to the next unit to show that is the other one that I think is really good. So firstly, let's just talk briefly about my thought process in thinking that this is a good unit. So Sukuna can have really high DPS, especially against a boss by himself, but he does require to follow up. What if we aren't able to follow up because we are already outright killing every enemy? What single unit in the game is there that we can potentially be able to enable this? It didn't really take too long because it was mentioned, this unit's name, so it just made me think of him already. But that is, of course, Guts. Why is Guts the key to being able to enable Sukuna to be able to do his follow-ups? It's pretty simple. It's because Guts already has a crap ton of damage. He's got 500,000 damage on upgraded by himself without any of his buffs up. If we start using his Berserker armor, that damage is just going to keep rising and rising. Now, why is this so important? If we read his first passive, Branded One, every 5 takedowns, he spawns a demon enemy with HP equal to this unit's damage stat. We want a high HP enemy so Sukuna can enable himself to do his follow-ups, and this is what Guts does. He is able to create enemies that have high enough HP so Sukuna can do his follow-ups, meaning that he can have that peak DPS, especially when it is fighting against bosses as well, because he can only do a follow-up on a single enemy once because of how his first passive reads right here. Anytime this unit first inflicts cleave on an enemy, he'll follow up. So if he applies cleave onto a boss, he'll do his follow-up, but then he will never be able to do another follow-up because that boss has permanently got cleave on it. But if we are constantly spawning in high health enemies, that means that Sukuna can always freely attack it and apply cleave. You might be wondering initially why I said Guts, because you might be thinking the reason why you would pair Sukuna with Guts is so Guts can pair well with getting that cleave buff, but no, it's the other way around. You use Guts so it's able to enable Sukuna more rather than the other way around. Guts is already doing a bunch of damage, so he is really good. There really isn't any downside to having these 2 units on a team. You might be wondering, oh, to be able to enable this, you need to have a lot of money, but like, is there really a downside? It's like, damn, to be able to do this max amount of damage, I need to max out 2 units that are doing a ton of damage by themselves. I really see no downsides to this. It's pretty much only positives. You just run Guts because Guts is already such a really good unit. And then you have Sukuna because why not? It just allows him to be able to use his follow-up attacks, which is really good, especially for boss DPS, because his boss DPS without follow-ups is pretty good, but with follow-ups it just gets even better. But yeah, that is pretty much going to be it. Of course, I had to put a little bit of propaganda in there for Sukuna, and maybe I think this might be the reason why they have him rated so highly on the wiki for being broken tier. I think it is because you can pair it with Guts to be able to make him always do his follow-up. But yeah, that's going to be me. I appreciate it if you haven't watched this far through the video. See ya.